Please welcome to the stage the founder of Made in LA, Nora May Cadden.
Good morning. Last day of Web Summit. How are you feeling? Yeah? Finger snaps? Did you have a nice Web Summit? Nice night summit, I should say? Had some coffee this morning? I haven't, but I had a great pastry a la portuguese, which was amazing. We're going to be looking at branded content today and producing for platforms, and we're going to start with branding. There's something very uncomfortable about a brand that is tone deaf. There's a very fine line between authentic and just another sales pitch. We're going to help you find it. We're going to help you find that magic today with our guests. So please welcome SHOWstudio's Mimma Viglezio, Creative Director of the New York Times, McDonnell, the Chief Marketing Officer of Malibu and Kahlua, Colin, Kavanagh, and the founder of Media Nanny, Woldring.
Good morning, everybody. Yesterday, I sat where you are and I listened to a few talks, and almost everybody was talking about authenticity. So apparently, it's a thing that worries us. And I'm very lucky to have a panel of experts. So from creative direction to strategic PR to marketeer to tell us how they tackle the problem. So I would like to start with the actual question. Is it still possible to be authentic when you create content for a brand in whatever platform and in whatever ways? Is there someone who wants to start, or shall I ask?
I'll start. Yes.
So Grammy, in your time, is the creative director.
Well done. Yeah. I mean, I guess being from the New York Times, and I mean, our whole branding strategy was around the truth and about facts and things like that. So I think authenticity is probably one of the most important things when it comes to branded content. If you start to lose the trust of the audience, they're coming to consume content of a particular quality and tone. As soon as you lose that trust by gambling with the authenticity of the content, that's when things start to go downhill, really. So I think it's probably one of the most important things to strive for when creating content.
I would like to have a word about what do we mean by authenticity. Like they said in the explanation here, when a brand is tone deaf, which I guess it means when they try to stand for something that they really don't stand for, or they didn't originally. So is that what you mean when you talk about trust?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, like, again, the New York Times, we've just got over 4 million subscribers now. So we owe a service to those subscribers and that audience. They come to our platform to consume content of a particular style and a particular standards, whether that's branded or whether it's unbranded. I think as long as you try and match those standards and deliver the same type of tone, I don't think the audience necessarily cares whether it's paid for by a brand.
But what do you mean by paid? What do you do? What do you do for the brand?
Yeah, so I'll take it a step back. So I'm the creative director of SHOWstudio, and we create content that is paid for and posted by our clients and brands that choose to advertise with the Times. So they'll come to us and they'll say, like, we want to tell a particular story that promotes a service or a product, and it's up to us then to come up with a story and execute it in a way that feels authentic to the audience, but also delivers a brand message within that story. So I think that's where the authenticity lies, is making sure that it delivers value for the audience as well as promoting this brand message that the brand wants.
And does it appear as an ad? Is it clear that it's an ad?
That's where I think the trust lies, is we're still really in an infancy of this industry. I mean, the studio has been open for over 5 years now, but I think the industry as a whole is still relatively new, and people are still finding the feet in general. I think what I said earlier around trust is the biggest deal. And once you try and pull the wool over their eyes, you know, the audience members aren't stupid. You know, they know when they're being sold to. So I think if you're clear and upfront, and we always are at the New York Times, everything is clearly labeled, paid for, and posted by the brand. Again, I don't think readers or viewers necessarily mind that it's paid for.
Yeah, no, well, first of all, bon dia, hello. No, I totally agree with what Graham is saying. I think, you know, for our brands, we definitely try and be authentic, but you know, it can go wrong, despite the best of intentions.
We have some examples.
We have some examples
in our
right?
brains.
Exactly. So, a couple of things that we try to do to kind of minimize that, I would say. First of all, when we're sitting down to develop content, we really think about going in. What are the objectives? You know, do we want to have an emotional message, or is it more a functional message? And I think that really sort of contextualizing it that way from the outset and being clear on your objectives when you go into it, I think really helps. You know, I think the second thing as well is it helps if you know what you're talking about. I know that sounds really obvious, but if I take a brand like Malibu, for example, like our target love to travel. You know, so we could develop lots of content on travel, but the reality is there's plenty of other brands out there that are far more knowledgeable about travel than a brand like Malibu. So that's definitely not something that we would do.
So you mean the travel is in your DNA?
It's in our DNA, but it's not something that we would say we're an authority on. You know, so I think that's super important. If you want your content to be authentic, it has to be credible. So I think you need to pick the themes and pick the areas where your brand has real credibility and where you can have some uniqueness as well. And then I think the third thing for us, and this is super important, is stay on brand. Don't go off brand. I think everybody can see through it when brands wander, maybe stumble into areas where they really shouldn't be. And so the way we try and do that is, you know, we always try and play back the values of the brand. And I think that's, you know, that's super important. And I have an example I brought. It's not something that we've done. It's another brand in our portfolio. It's Absolute Vodka. And
which has done marketing very well.
I think everybody knows Absolute Vodka. But, you know, we wanted to talk about our production process. We wanted to talk about how we're made. And there's a great story behind this.
Can we see it?
But just before we bring it on, it's how do you talk about that in an authentic way, and how do you talk about it in an entertaining way as well? So I think we're going to show the video, and then I'll talk to it afterwards.
Okay.
Briefly. Let's have a look at this.
Hi. If you are watching this, then congratulations. You now work for Absolute. We do things a little different around here. Don't believe me? Let me show you. Unlike other vodkas, we only use wheat that comes from around Åhus. And we know each farmer by name. Hey, Lars.
Hey, Gunnar.
Yes. Sweden is famous for its water, and we only use the purest Åhus water. Everybody at our distillery is a local commuter. Oh, rush hour. We make up to 600,000 bottles, and each one needs to be flawless. And we have very high standard.
I can't bear to look at it.
How many times do we distill our vodka? We distill it countless times until it's perfect. The same way our founder did 150 years ago. Our production process is CO2 neutral, and we don't like to waste a thing. That's why our excess stillage is used to feed local pigs and cows every day. Like Leif. But the most important ingredient that goes into Absolute is our people. So you see, every single drop drop that goes into every single bottle of Absolute vodka anywhere in the world comes from here in Åhus. And that's why we're the vodka with nothing to hide. Welcome to Absolute.
That's really good.
So yeah, of course it's a brand trying to get a message out there, but it's actually a serious issue. There's a lot of talk about craft and craft vodkas and what are craft vodkas. And we have this great story to tell on Absolute. And just so you know, actually, employees actually took part in that video, and our CEO was actually featured in that video as well. So
Make it CEO with his employees.
You know, so it's completely authentic, and we stand by everything everything in that video because, again, it plays to our values as a brand, and that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, that was great. A great example of total authenticity. I would like to go to Josie and see the side of the influencer. I guess in your job you probably crack deals with brands to put forward your people, and I think it's almost even more dangerous for them because they can be killed with a tweet, right?
Yeah, well, there's a big difference between talent that we mostly work with and influencers. So obviously, like the last few years, there's been a big upcoming market for people who post nice pictures of brands on their social media. But with talent, obviously, they already have their own image and they are a brand. So it's very, we need to be very careful with what brands we like to work with and which ones not, because it could kill their brand, if you want to put it like that. So for example, with Martin Garrix, we're doing a deal now with Armani, which we started 2.5 years ago. And what we think is super important when you work with talent or influencers is that the brand connects directly to the person that's going to tell the story. Because obviously there's an agency and there's an agent and there's another agency and then comes talent, where we always like to, even now we're doing a deal with Axe, the body spray, and we brought them into Amsterdam to sit with him in the studio and listen to his songs, and he could tell his story. So when they were starting, to make the concept about the video that they were doing with him, it could be more authentic because they got to know him personally, and the story was way different than they had in mind before, because they were like, oh, it's going to DJ and it was going to be like this, and he's like, no, I don't fake DJ. I don't want to do DJing on stage, like, in a TV show, because, I'm not really DJing, and, so all of these things are super important, I think, for brands when they work with talent or influence, that you pick the people that can actually tell the story that you want to tell, but also that the brand really knows who they are working with before picking talent.
So do you sometimes have brands that don't mean anything for one of your talent, but they try to lure them in with a lot of money? I mean, and that would come from the creative directors that like, what were you thinking? Does it still happen a lot?
Well, not with the talent that we work with, because it's dangerous. If they start working with a brand they don't feel connected to, it's, obviously we're looking at what's important for them. They want to reach new target groups. So for example, if you're, a music recording artist, and you want to, get more traction in the fashion world, you'll be working with a fashion brand. But for example, if you're a super young artist, it could be dangerous to work with an alcoholic brand, when you're too young and you're a role model for young kids. And so all of these things that we look at. So it's never about the money. And for the talent that we work with, some of the deals that we do, is less money than when they perform one show, for example. But we do it just because it makes their brand better. And with influencers, obviously, it's easy for us to work with brands and find the right influencers than work for an influencer like Gianluca Vacchi, who we work with. And he has like 11 million followers. But I think a lot of brands like, oh, he's so big, it's probably too expensive, because the post and the engagement, and it's very hard to see, what his target group is. So I feel like brands rather now work with micro-influencers who can tell a story and, have a very high engagement and a smaller target group maybe, but it's more authentic.
I think maybe I could just to add, we've done a lot of work with celebrities and with influencers. In fact, on Malibu, pretty much all the communications we have now is done and co-created with influencers. And I think there's a couple of learnings we've had, and it's back to what you were saying, Jose. First of all, like when we try and engage with big celebrities, like it's super challenging. And, you know, quite frankly, we don't have the same objectives. You know, we want to create great branded content. A lot of the time, the big celebrities, at least their management, there's a very strong financial aspect to all of the discussions. And I think that makes it super difficult then to actually create authentic content. It's just the relationship then you have with the artist or the celebrity is so tainted because you're into these very strong financial discussions. It can sometimes be very, very difficult. So what we've started to do now is work a lot more with mid-tier influencers, with micro-influencers. And by the way, that's super challenging as well, because you have to kind of let go of control. Because if you want to use influencers, then you have to let them create. So that's exactly what we've had to do. And it's meant like completely changing our ways of working when it comes to content development. We have an in-house studio that does a lot of our basic content, and then we work with influencers and a creative agency on the bigger stuff. But we've had to change our ways of working. I mean, it used to be you would do a shoot for a TV ad, and then you would spend 3 months in post-production, and then you would go through 10 to 12 approval processes internally before it got signed off. Like, those days are gone. I mean, you know, we just did some stuff on Malibu this summer, and it's real time. You know, the influencers are posting in real time, so you have to be comfortable with that, and you have to let go of the creative control to some extent.
I would like, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut people off, but we don't have much time left. I would like to hear from Graham, like, your experience in this. I mean, do you have big discussions with the brands where you're trying to convince them or advise them that what they want is not dangerous? Sometimes it can be really dangerous. Think Pepsi Cola.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a large percentage of my role is trying to stop brands from hurting themselves. Sometimes,
oh, really?
You know, not all brands. I mean, you know, we worked with Malibu and made some great content in the past. It's difficult to make brands realize that branding content is not just a bigger ad space. You know, consumers come to the platform to consume content, and they either want to be entertained or informed. They don't want to see a 15-minute video of someone's CEO talking about how great the product is, you know? No. And, you know, like I said, the industry is still relatively new. People are still catching up on that, and it's different in different parts of the world. But yeah, a lot of it is an education process, and just going back to what Jose was talking about earlier, when the partnership is really, really important. Sometimes the brands will come to us and say, we want a video or we want a VR film. We always tell them, you know, let's take a step back, let's work out what the story is first, then figure out how to tell it. I talked about this in the presentation the other day, but the best branded content works when you get together with a brand and you go on that journey together. You know, we might know our audience better than anybody else on the planet, but nobody knows a brand like the brand themselves. So if you're going to have really, really good quality, high engagement from branded content, it has to be that partnership.
Yeah, I guess we also have that because obviously we work in the music industry, and there's a lot of brands who want to do something in the music or entertainment industry, and they're like, yes, we want to work with a DJ or a big artist, and we're like, okay, but you know, of course that looks like the best match, but let's, you know, like you're saying, take a step back. Who do you want to reach? Because all of the arts have their different audiences, and I guess for them, it's super hard to find their way in certain spaces, and you know, that's what we try to help them with, is to create content that works in our industry. Because
it's the strategy of it.
Yeah, especially people that, you know, in like say for the house music scene, that's super underground and authentic is super important. And you come with like this, you know, massive strategy where it's, you know, not cool at all, they won't buy it. So that's why, you know, for brands, and I guess also for anyone, it's good to have the right partners and the right agencies that are specialized in certain points. So not every major agency is good in every market.
Of course, yeah.
I have a few questions, but one particularly interesting, and 1 minute 41 seconds. So quickly, which role should brands play in the political discussion? Do you have to deal with that? Do you stay away from that?
For artists, most of the time we stay away from it, yeah.
It's too dangerous.
Unless they have a really, you know, they've really read it through, but yeah, for most of the artists, it's too dangerous, yeah.
What about brands?
I think it's not for all brands. I think, again, back to what I said at the start, I think you really need to have some credibility if you're going to engage in some of this debate. I mean, I will give a shout out to Nike. I think, you know, the stuff they've done with Colin Kaepernick and creating a awareness around that whole issue, I think was great, and that was real leadership. I think on some of our brands, maybe a brand like Absolute, we could definitely take more of a lead. I think you have to have a point of view. You know, this idea of just being vanilla all the time, I think, is actually quite detrimental.
It can be.
But I think, you know, you do need to tread quite carefully, because I think, again, it's like, does the brand really have a credibility to take a stand or not?
It can be dangerous, and you've seen it happen a million times where, you know, people think, or brands think they can just plaster a rainbow on their poster, and then all of a sudden they're aligned with pride, and you know that's not the way it works. Like you say, and I guess going back to the very first question you asked, what does authenticity mean? That's it in a nutshell. You need to, like Colin was saying, it needs to be relevant to the brand, and it needs to be believable from that point of view.
Yeah, that's true.
But I also think some brands, they try to feel relevant with what goes on in society, and so what Pepsi did in the infamous ad, they say, well, I mean, like, you know, manifestations or whatever going out in the street is trendy, let's do it with the top model of the moment, and that's going to work. And the problem, apart from all we know, is also that Pepsi never really stood for something political. And as you say, Absolute has done, in a very subtle way, some political, it stood for something political, and so it could probably work.
I mean,
better in that case.
historically, Absolute's a brand that's actually been quite engaged with LGBT. You know, in pretty much all across the world, and that continues to be the case. You know,
but so they would be more credible.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, with the story behind it. So we work with Bumble, the app, and obviously the whole story behind it.
The
like,
dating app for women.
So obviously Whitney used to work at Tinder, like this whole story about that, you know, female empowerment and how important that is. I, you know, get a lot of questions like for 2 years already for, oh, can you be on a panel about women empowerment? And I've always been like, I don't know, no, but now I work with them, and they kind of, you know, make me an ambassador of speaking up as females, and there's a whole story, and there is a goal where we want to, now we're going to find the next female DJ, because obviously there's, you know,
and it feels authentic.
Now it feels authentic, but 2 years before I wouldn't be.
I'm sorry, guys, they're going to switch off our mic. We're out of time. There are many questions. I hope we did enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.